function, strain, random, function, to be random, function. The world has shrunk to the size of this room, function, and as long as it takes me to understand it, I must stay where I am. If I don't manage to find even this place, it will be absurd for me to look for another. 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 Absurd for me to look for another.
To repeat Pascal, all the unhappiness of man stems from one thing only, that he's incapable of staying quietly in his room. All the unhappiness, I am bound to use myself up. To repeat Pascal, all the unhappiness of man stems from one thing only, that he's incapable of staying quietly in his room.
You remember you gave yourself a new name, John, because all cowboys were named John, and each time your mother would call you by your real name, you would refuse to enter. You remember running out of the house and lying in the middle of the road with your eyes shut, waiting for a car to run you over. You remember thinking the world was flat. You remember learning to tie your shoe. You remember your father knotting his tie and saying, "Rise and shine, little boy." You remember wanting to be a squirrel, to have a bushy tail and jump from trees as if you were a fly. You remember the nurse in a white dress sat beside your baby sister and gave you little squares of Swiss chocolate. You remember she called them Swiss, although you didn't know what that meant. You remember learning to ride a bicycle. You remember sitting at your desk in the first grade away from the other children because you had been punished for talking. You remember pushing a sled on the ice in the schoolyard and falling, cutting your lip. You remember the stinging sensation of iodine. You remember being really scared of Santa Claus. You remember thinking that the voice you heard inside yourself was the voice of God. You remember writing your first book, a detective story written in green ink.
What do you want from me?
Something happens, or else something doesn't happen. A body moves, or else it doesn't move. And if it moves, something begins to happen. And even if it doesn't move, something begins to happen. It has already come, or else it's going to come.